Cambridge Film Show.
This is Cambridge Radio.
So, hello there and welcome to another edition of the Cambridge Film Show, your fortnightly foray into the fantastic, funky and sometimes feeble world of films. A lot of alliteration there, that's what I'd like to do. Broadcasting right here on Cambridge Radio across the city and South Cambridgeshire. It is almost spooky season and the beginning of half term. The leaves are falling and Netflix is beginning to trail their Christmas movies. But it's not time to dive into winter proper just yet. Here in Cambridge, we also have the Cambridge Film Fest, which has just started. And lovely Vicky, the GM of the Picture House, will tell us a little bit more later on in the show. But we also have our usual mix of films you can catch this fortnight on both the big screen and on the streaming services if you're after a slightly more casual experience. Hot to trot in a hosting seat, it's me, Emma Marchant, and joining me this Saturday are the following crack team of slightly slimmed down reviewers, as well as Vicky Eyre. Hello. We have Luke Owen.
Hello.
And Yossi Osman.
Hi.
And we have a great selection of film. Well, I mean, I say great, but, you know, let's stick with that. We have a great selection of films for you. Keanu Reeves and Seth Rogen star in Aziz Ansari's directorial debut angelic comedy Good Fortune. And Luke Guadagnino follows up my own personal film of 2024 challenges with academic Me Too drama After the Hunt. We will say yes, Bruce, to Jeremy Allen White playing the boss in the latest rock biopic, Springsteen delivering Me From Nowhere, and Ethan Hawke returns as the grabber, but how can this be, in horror sequel Black Phone 2. Turning to streaming, we have the utter nonsense of Keira Knightley trying to uncover the mystery of the woman in Cabin 10, and a grown-up take on the romance genre in The Threesome, not to mention Catherine Bigelow's taut nuclear thriller House of Dynamite. So, grab yourself a pumpkin spice latte or something stronger if you like, and let's get started with Roofman.
Oh my God.
I'm not a bad guy.
Good morning, team.
I just made some bad choices.
You gotta help me, man.
You sound crazy. Find a safe place to hide for a few months.
I would like to introduce you to someone. Would you like to go out with me?
Yes, I would very much, really, very much like to go out on a date with you.
So that was a bit of the trailer for Roofman. Based on a true story of Jeffrey Roofman Manchester, it pairs Channing Tatum with director Derek Cianfrance for a slippery, stranger-than-fiction crime drama with a romantic streak. After escaping prison, Manchester hides out inside a Toys R Us while planning his next move until love and the law complicate things. Cianfrance, I think, in this is leaning more into sort of domestic life and blue-collar yearnings maybe than heist pyrotechnics and big stuff, Vicky. Would you agree? Do you think his intimate style, I mean, he made Blue Valentine and Place Among Pines.
Yeah.
Does this kind of make this true crime story a little bit more than you were expecting?
I mean, I thought it was going to be in a really wild, out there comedy in some way. I mean, the trailer really portrays it. It's very contrasting colours. You know, you have a man in Toys R Us, and that's kind of every kid's dream. But it is a bit subdued. It is a bit darker. Like, you do get those moments where you can tell, like, he is in the film, like, you know, it is a real life story, but he is trying the best. He hears like little snippets of he puts radios throughout the show, and throughout the store, and essentially he's listening to the lives of the workers surrounding him day by day, and he has a conscience, and, you know, he's trying to help them out, and he's trying to do these little things for them because he becomes attached, and he's also extremely bored. But in that, there's definitely dark moments, especially you know, towards the end, and kind of at the beginning, where, you know, he has made the decisions of crime, and you can tell that's really playing on him. And I think that the tone is never too comedic. Always, there is very funny moments in it, but I feel like it does have a crime tone throughout. You can see the confliction in Channing Tatum, and I definitely came out with this thinking, I forgot how good of an actor Channing Tatum always is. And I know he's in a lot of comedies, and I know he did the absolute opposite of that with Blink Twice this last year, but he really did take on a kind of, I think it's like a serious acting role, and it definitely, with his relationship with Kirsten Dunst throughout, it was very lovely to see. And I always say this maybe, but I just don't ever see the side of him, or I think of him in such a serious way, but I think he's very talented in this.
I'll turn to you, Luke, because you've seen this too. I think Vicky's right. This is a really nuanced performance from Channing Tatum as Jeffrey Manchester, because it's a very, very complicated, it's quite a complicated story and quite a complicated character. some might say probably his best dramatic work that Vicky was just saying. Do you think he's ably backed up by the rest of the cast, particularly, let's say, Kirsten Dunst, who is such a secret weapon?
Well, I just want to echo what Vicky said. I agree wholeheartedly with the film as a whole. This film is far more of a domestic drama than it is a crime film. It's very much interested in the human relationships. And apart from the first 20 minutes, which is a quite wild and unpredictable ride, much more what I thought I was getting into in this film, it really does settle down and becomes mostly a drama about Channing Tatum living this life that he's quite ashamed of, while also getting involved in a relationship that he knows he shouldn't be, because he's a criminal on the run who's basically biding his time until he can flee the country. But he finds himself attached to Kirsten Dunst, who has been workmanlike, I would say, in a lot of films over the past few decades. She was obviously a real Hollywood starlet of the... do we still say starlet? That feels like a very old school term. A real up-and-comer in the turn of the century. And she's been relegated to a lot of quite dull roles, I would say, in recent years. And
I agree.
She is the real lifeblood of this film. She carries a lot of the heart here. And one of the things that's quite interesting about this film is that she's a very, very nice person throughout all of this. She works at a toy store and she's trying to encourage her co-worker to stand up for himself. And she goes to a church and she wants to donate to charities, while her boss, who is played by Peter Dinklage, is a real baddie. He's is a real cartoon baddie of the piece. And then you've got Channing Tatum sat in the middle, who's a criminal with a heart of gold. And I think the way that the film works is having him as sort of an emotional barometer between the two of them.
I had a slightly different take. I found Channing Tatum's character slightly queasy because at the beginning of the film he has a family, right? The reason that he gets into crime is because he's ex-military and he has this sort of slightly neurodivergent way of looking at the world. That's what his friend says to him, played brilliantly actually by Lakeith Stanfield as well. Him and Juno Temple sort of play the sort of getaway help couple or whatever, and that's a nice, really neat little turn. But I found that because as soon as he goes to prison, his wife is that's it. He's cut off from the wife and the kids because she says, "Look, we have to move on." That's what I've been told to do, and I found it slightly queasy that he's sort of trying to hop back into a ready-made family. And I think that Channing Tatum did that really well. Yes, you're sympathetic, but there's always something slightly off with that desire of his, and I thought that was a really interesting character study.
I feel like the relationship he forms with Kirsten Dunst's kids throughout it is definitely I think he's trying to do it because he misses his relationship with his daughter, and also he just wants to see if he can still be a father figure. You're absolutely right, and you can see it definitely through he gifts them with all of the Toys R Us gifts. They're of age, where that is definitely his main ploy to get into the family, and obviously the teenage daughter doesn't fall for it, but then there's definitely twists and turns in which they garner a relationship. And I think with one of the dark aspects is when all of this finally unravels is that he does lose that and he breaks their trust. But in the end credits scene, you definitely get real life takes from the people that this affected, and the fact that the church community that he gets drawn into, and the fact that the daughters at the time don't think anything too much of it, just shows that it is just one of those. It was just one of the, maybe a short period of time, and it's just rolled out quite well.
So I do just want to say, sorry, I feel like you may have misrepresented what I was saying. I think that Channing Tatum sits in the middle between the really good guys and the really bad guys.
Fair enough.
And one of the things that's really interesting in this film is I think the film invites us to decide how sympathetic we should be to him, because I think the film goes out of its way to try and empathise with him far more than it does Peter Dinklage's character, for example, but it also shows a darkness that we don't see in Kirsten Dunst's character. And I think it'll be really interesting when people come out of this film to discuss whether they think that Channing Tatum was justified in his actions or not. And I think any film that leaves you having a good discussion afterwards is a film that's well made.
And I also think, to add to that, it's also really well shot. It uses its location, because it's pretty much stuck in the Toys R Us location for large parts of the film, and Channing Tatum is on screen for large swathes of the film. I think it's shot well. I think it's a great... I wasn't necessarily a huge fan of Kieran Francis' previous stuff, so I think I really this sort of took it out a bit, takes it up to the next level, and I think it's a really, really decent film that I wasn't necessarily expecting. Also, blink and you miss it, but Ben Mendelsohn as a singing as a choir leading minister was not, as they say, on my bingo list for 2025, but I was here for it. That is Roofman. It's a Certificate 15. It's showing in a Light and Picture House, and I honestly think it's going to be one of the better films that we're reviewing this week. Right, on to something a little bit more scary.
Have you heard of the grabber? I killed him.
What happened in that basement really changed it. Finn, I had a bad dream. It was about missing kids.
It was just a dream.
About a real place. A youth camp.
Just in time for Halloween, Scott Derrickson and Ethan Hawke, plus the other cast members, return with The Black Phone 2, the sequel to the 2021 or 2022, I think, supernatural hit, which was based on Joe Hill, who is, of course, the son of Stephen King of horror, his short story. It's set several years after the events of the original, and Finney, who's now a teenager, played by Mason Thames still, is struggling, I think, with the trauma of his abduction when new disappearances start to happen, and the Black Phone, I haven't seen this, so I'm lifting this directly from IMDb, and the Black Phone starts to appear, but this time it's in his sister Gwen's dreams. Vicky, you are, as we know, our Scream Queen, and you are also the only person in the studio who's seen this. From what I understand, because I did read the book of the first one, I mean, they must have to reintroduce Hawke's character then, in a way. Does that work? Does it feel cash grabby? Does it feel like it's going to be a franchise?
Oh, they didn't really introduce him at all. They're just like you said, it sets place a few years later, and what happens is you kind of you start with the younger sister Gwen. In the first film, you realise that Gwen has these psychic powers, that she's able to find her brother Finn, and you can tell from the first film as well that Finney can talk to the dead and he can listen to them. And these are problems that these kids are still having years on. Is even though the grabber's gone, they are still suffering the kind of the abilities which you find out is passed on from their mother. So the grabber doesn't really get reintroduced. You kind of are still living through the trauma through these kids' lives. But then they get so the grabber just starts coming through their dreams and then through Finney's head, that essentially they realise that they need to go to this location. Location just happens to be the winter camp of their mother, and you get to the source of their mother's the childhood. And it definitely it sounds very, maybe you're smiling. I can tell this plot is very thrilling to you. But I think what Scott Derrickson is I truly think he's made one of the scariest films ever made with Sinister. That's how
I thought you were going to say this, and I was going to be like, wow. Yeah, go on, right.
Truly Sinister is one of the scariest things I've ever seen, and I feel like The Black Phone was his kind of take of it. It garnered a lot of great American attention. Well, it garnered a lot of American audience because it had this kind of, a fan base of these younger characters that they attached themselves to and had sympathy for, and, it became a really big thing. And he's definitely followed that on with this film. You still have flashbacks, but this time he's remembered kind of who he is, maybe a bit too much, but you definitely have like the throwback Sinister videotape scenes where you're thrown into this winter camp to these murders about 20, 30, 15 years ago, and it's got the very creepy music that follows throughout, and I did feel a bit more scared in this one than I did the original, and I kind of thought it might end well, but there was definitely a lot of gore, a lot of very tense moments, and I think he really understood he wanted to take this to an elevated level, and I think he did.
Well, I mean, it is a Certificate 18. Now, that's actually, while I was smiling at you, I was also double checking that. So obviously, that tends to make for a stronger horror experience.
Definitely, yeah.
Because I feel like Black Phone was only a 15. You talk about the fact it sort of flashes back to this winter camp of their mothers. Does that mean that it brings a sort of sense of 1980s, 90s sort of slightly darker, grubbier horror into a modern day horror film as well? Is he doing a little bit of that?
We've definitely moved on from the 70s in this, 100%. It is a more grittiness of the 90s, but there is a lot of flashbacks, and the fashion is you can't really tell the dating of it. You can definitely tell with this camp scene that they have drawn from, it's definitely Friday the 13th. up in all these cabins. It is very based on, a lot of really powerful 80s horrors. And I think this is just really good source material, because I do think it is a very well-rounded finished product. Do I think it's like the greatest film? No, but I do think it's a good sequel, and a good sequel's very hard to find.
Does it look like there's going to be... Do you think there'll be a part 3 to it or not?
I think there can definitely be a part 3 to this.
They've left it open-ended. And Ethan Hawke is as good as he... And I mean, was there a standout in the cast for you? Is it Mason Thames? Is it Ethan Hawke?
I think that Madeline McGraw is the main draw to this. But I think realistically, I think Ethan Hawke is still as scary as he was in the first. And the way that man can contort his body is definitely a fear. It's on ice skates, just by the way. So it's definitely... I do think everyone should go and watch this. And I think it's a horror franchise that is worth a franchise.
A decent horror treat for Halloween, by the sounds of things. As I just said, The Black Phone 2 is a certificate 18, and it's screening at all Cambridge cinemas. Okay, on to something a little bit lighter with Good Fortune.
I'm an angel. See the wings? I know all about you. I know you lost your job. I know you're living in your car.
I did everything I was supposed to do and nothing's working out.
I'm not really supposed to be doing this. I'm normally only in charge of saving people from texting and driving.
Wait, you're telling me I have a budget guardian angel?
Kinda.
My life is just in the service of people like Jeff.
Arj, I'm Jeff, a pleasure.
The people who actually get to live.
So, that was Good Fortune, written and directed by Aziz Ansari, who I know mostly from Parks and Rec. Good Fortune is a high-concept supernatural body swap comedy. Does that sound right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Well done me, I didn't even see it again. A struggling guy who's Ansari and his wealthy boss, Seth Rogen, switch lives thanks to a slightly hapless angel played by Keanu Reeves. So I think, from what I pick up from this is kind of a bit of culture clash hijinks, but also there's some satire to be said about, the wealth distribution in America.
If you hadn't said, I would have thought you'd watch the film based on that setup. You've pretty much hit the nail on the head here. And I think the high concept comedy has really gone out of fashion in recent years, and this really is very zany. It's magic realism would be another word he used to describe. But you have Keanu Reeves plays the angel of texting and driving is his domain, and he feels very dissatisfied and he wants to do more meaningful work. And he sees Aziz Ansari, who's really struggling. He's living in his car, struggling to make money. He's doing temp gigs, doing on apps where you can people pay you to do jobs. It's essentially like being an Uber driver, and he really wants to get involved and to make a difference, but his interventions end up only making things worse in what ends up being an incredibly zany body swap between him and Seth Rogen, who I believe this is his first leading role in a film in a very long time. He's done a lot of supporting roles. He did Dumb Money a couple of years ago.
Well, and also, of course, his own passion project, The Studio on Apple TV, has become an enormous hit. This sort of satire of Hollywood.
Which I did like to some extent, but that still ended up, despite it being a seemingly very different Seth Rogen project, did involve him taking drugs in quite a lot of the episodes. And I think if people know Seth Rogen, they'll know him as the guy who gets high and people muck around, and this is not that at all. He plays a supposedly self-made tech millionaire who ends up losing everything due to Keanu Reeves' interventions. And I thought the three main cast members here work really well together. I'm really impressed with Aziz Ansari writing and directing and starring in this. I think, as you say, most people will know him as a supporting member in Parks and Rec. I think he was really, really great in this film. But beyond being funny, I think this film is very, very pertinent into today's culture. So we've talked a bit about these two different people, the millionaire and the guy who's struggling, and they swap lives. And you're setting up this It's a Wonderful Life type deal where Keanu Reeves is trying to get people to go, hey, money isn't the root of everything. Actually, can't you find happiness elsewhere? And the film completely rejects that in a way that I think is completely satisfying for people. If you watched It's a Wonderful Life and thought this is sentimental claptrap, I think you'll absolutely adore the message.
Watch that and think it was, wow, you're throwing out some opinions here, Luke, today, and I'm here for it. I mean,
I'm not one of those people, by the way. I love It's a Wonderful Life, but I think a lot of people will watch that film and they're struggling financially.
It's of its time, right?
But
so
just,
this is 2025
it does feel somewhat out of to play. If you tell the person who's struggling to pay the rent that, hey, there's more to life than money, why don't you just be grateful for your family? I think a lot of people would say, hey, actually, money is very, very important.
Yes, it's easy to say money isn't important when you've got it, as everyone always says. It's also a very tight running time, I think, of about 90 minutes. Is that right?
Mean, that's part of the.
What a treat.
That's part of the course for what we'd want from a comedy. Obviously, a lot of comedies these days are very bloated, which is why this does feel like it's been ripped out of 1991.
So it feels like a little fresh confection. And as Azari, like I said, this is his feature-length directorial debut, but that doesn't take away from his performance at all. It seems to be
he's the film is structured in a interesting way in which you get different perspectives of different people throughout the film. So he's very much the star of the first 30 minutes. Then we move over and we see some Keanu Reeves and we see some Seth Rogen. We also have Keke Palmer. I do believe she prefers to go by the name Lauren Palmer these days. So I do want to shout that out to her, although she is still credited as Keke Palmer, which is somewhat confusing. And she plays again a romantic interest of Aziz Ansari, and they have some wonderful chemistry. And there's also a really bizarre subplot that you wouldn't expect from this sort of film, where she's trying to form a union at the lumber yard that she works at.
Love it.
Which is, again, it feels like this film is really laying its cards on the table for a message it wants to tell about working class Americans and unifying.
Well, honestly, you've sold it to me even more. I think it was sold already. Ozzy and I were both bemoaning the fact that we didn't get a chance to see this week. That's the nature of the beast. Obviously, when you do the show, you've got to, you have to try and fit in everything you can. But that was good fortune, and Luke has given it a glowing review for a feel-good 90-minute comedy, and it's showing still at the Light and the View. Right, on to our musical treat of the week.
No, put Born USA on the shelf. I want this record to feel different.
The label, once you have your first top 10, they want 3 for the next.
Well, we've never been about singles, but the whole story. Just trying to break a little new ground.
We got a little time, just not a lot. You know I'm not a mixer.
I'm not making a record, Mikey. Don't need to be perfect. I just want it to feel right.
Springsteen, Deliver Me From Nowhere, tells the story behind the making of Bruce Springsteen's 1982 masterpiece, Nebraska. Breakout star of The Bear, Jeremy Allen White, takes on the boss himself as Springsteen struggles with mental health and stardom whilst recording this album solo on a 4-track cassette in a rented New Jersey bedroom. Directed by Scott Cooper, who made Crazy Heart, which was the sort of Jeff Bridges vehicle from some years ago. This film is clearly, I'm talking to you, Luke, 'cause it's just you and I have seen this. Okay, so Springsteen is clearly trying for this sort of lo-fi indie, melancholy take, short time on a music biopic. Does that work?
No, it's for sure. We've gone from the sublime to the ridiculous here, I'm afraid. I'm going to lay my cards on the table. I'm a huge fan of Bruce Springsteen, and Nebraska in particular is a brilliant album, and I think we've spoken before, Emma, when this film was announced, you were sceptical about why they're making a film about the making of Bruce Springsteen's 6th album, because this isn't a film about his rise to stardom or his really, his glory days, if you will. And I think you needed a reason to believe that that's another Bruce Springsteen song. I don't know if you got that.
Thank you, Luke. I questioned the drama, didn't I?
Existed. Yeah,
I questioned where the drama was going to come in this.
The question is,
how right I was.
Why are they making a film about one of his commercially least successful and least well-known albums? And there is a whole lot of depth here. Nebraska was a real landmark album for Springsteen. He'd just come off of a series of quite big hits that had made him a big star, and he chose to reject that. He felt burnt out. He wanted to go back to his hometown, and he wanted to make music that was incredibly personal to him. And that is the kernels of a really great film. And the issue here is that there are going to be 2 types of people who come into this film. There are going to be the hardcore Springsteen fans like myself who will know a lot of these details, and they will feel that it simplifies or misrepresents the emotional journey that he goes on. This film seems to portray the idea that Bruce Springsteen had never been interested in personal or autobiographical stories up until now, and he has this huge breakdown that ends in some very weird moments later in the film. But if you know Springsteen, you know that he was making these kinds of songs right from day one. You look at his debut album, had a song like Lost in the Flood, which was about people coming back from Vietnam and feeling lost in the world. And then the other audience that this film is not going to appeal to are the people who take Born in the USA on face value, and they think that Springsteen's a hardcore rocker.
I would go as far as to say, Luke, there could be a third audience for this film, which might be me, let's say. I'm not a huge Springsteen fan, but what I hear I like, and he always has seemed like a terribly, genuine and thoroughly nice guy. And I did wanted to like this film, right, because it is earnest and it means well, but it is earnest to the point of such tedium that I just don't... I feel like you obviously have Jeremy Allen White, like I say, playing Bruce Springsteen. And again, he's used the same voice coach. I looked this up. It's Eric Vetro, who's this voice coach. He's worked with him, Timothy Chalamet and Austin Butler to do this sort of mixed sound. So part of it you're meant to be, oh my goodness, it's so amazing. He sounds just like and even Bruce Springsteen's doing this sort of promotional tour with him saying, yeah, it's amazing. I couldn't even believe it wasn't me when I heard him singing.
But I would say...
But that's just cosplay, isn't it?
I was really looking forward to this film, and I think that's one of the reasons that I'm so disappointed in it. And
the way they use the music in it.
The one good thing about this film is Jeremy Allen White. He really nails the look. You might say it's a brilliant disguise.
Oh,
that's another
so many. I got it. I got that one. Too many.
Yeah, that was one of his big hits.
No, that's great. I like it.
But then I didn't look this up, but I'm fairly sure that whenever he's singing, his face and his mouth is obscured, and they use the original recordings of Springsteen, and it creates this really disconcerting disconnect between the music that we're all very familiar with and a face that feels slightly, is uncanny. It's very close, but not Springsteen.
Not quite there. But take that all... I mean, you're going to get that with any musical biopic anyway. It's hard for people to be, playing a person, particularly someone like Springsteen, who's still very much alive, still very much in the public eye. But putting that to one side, the other, I just felt it was so... Jeremy Strong is completely wasted as his manager. And then Grace Gummer... Meryl Streep's daughter, who plays his wife, they just sort of have these scenes where she's putting hand cream in bed, and it's just a way to sort of explain exposition. He's like, I just feel like he's so into himself, I can't reach him. And she's like, oh, I don't know, honey, you've got to try, or whatever. It's the most banal script.
The dialogue is really... Like, there's a moment in the film where it's like someone goes up to him and says, oh, I know who you are. And then Bruce goes like, at least one of us does.
Yeah. It's not a good script. Odessa Young plays a sort of half-hearted romantic interest. I'm not sure if she's fictional or
I'm not
real.
I
didn't want to look that up. It didn't, because I could see why they were putting it in there to sort of say, look, he's struggling too much to even be able to hold down a relationship with an honest working class girl from Jersey who's perfect for him or whatever. And then you have this incredibly strange... I mean, I know Stephen Graham is nearly one of our national treasures now, but this whole point of the flashbacks are in black and white to Bruce Springsteen's what appears to be his difficult upbringing with a difficult father who is sort of semi-abusive to both his wife and to Bruce, played by Stephen Graham. And then in colour when they come back, because Bruce has bought him a house in California and he's still not very well, he's still drinking too much, obscured by the most bizarre sort of fat suit. It just... I thought that was a really... I thought Stephen Graham and Gabby Hoffman were really underserved by sort of dipping into them in this way, but not looking into that at all.
Because Springsteen has a notoriously difficult relationship with his father that he's sung about in many songs, like Independence Day, for example. That's about his struggled relationship with his dad. And because Stephen Graham, terrific actor, and you get these kind of 2-bit flashbacks of his childhood, and then when he gets a phone call that says his dad's lost, and I think, how are they going to age up Stephen Graham for when he appears back on screen? And my jaw hit the floor, and I just thought this film has descended into a new low. What I would say is, a moment in the film, someone says, oh, no one tells a story quite like Bruce, and I would say, including Scott Cooper doesn't tell a story quite like Springsteen. And if you want to know more, listen to some Bruce Springsteen songs. Listen to Nebraska from beginning to end, because that will tell you more about Springsteen than watching this film.
Yeah, you're so right. And it reminded me as well that I remember when Crazy Heart came out and it got this kind of big buzz around Jeff Bridges' performance. I remember watching Crazy Heart and thinking it was an incredibly self-indulgent and morose piece of filmmaking. And I feel that this is also self-indulgent and morose. And just like I say, the absolute, for me, top crime for a music biopic, it is dull, and that is unfair because, like you say, go and listen to Bruce Springsteen because he is. But you're right, Jeremy Allen White. It's a solid performance from him, and it's not going to do him any harm.
I do think he's a long list for an Oscar nominee, and I think if the film had been any better whatsoever, he might have had a chance.
Yeah.
But I don't think, given the reception this film has got, I don't.
Oh no, the marketing's been confused. The script was awful. But anyway, we could obviously talk about how bad this film is all day, but we won't do that. That's Springsteen delivering me from nowhere. And if you still fancy going to see it, you might be a Springsteen completist or a music biopic completist. It's a Certificate 15, and it is showing at the Arts Picture House, The Everyman, and The Light.
Cambridge Radio.
The Adam Brooks Charitable Trust raises funds for Adam Brooks and the Rosie, as well as the planned cancer and children's hospitals. In a new monthly show, we'll tell you about the people involved with this much-loved hospital charity.
It's a number of people I talk to who just phone in, make a donation, who equally have these amazing stories to tell.
Gavin Richards and Danny Smith speak to the medical professionals, the caregivers, and the inspiring fundraisers.
And that's enabled 200 more patients to be seen every month, and it's a bright, lovely and spacious surroundings with specialist equipments.
Acts Amazing People, online whenever you want, and Sunday at 12 on Cambridge Radio.
On Saturday the 1st of November, join one of Cambridge's best-loved traditions on Midsummer Common as Cambridge City Council presents Fireworks Night. From 6 p.m, grab a bite to eat from the street food trucks. Enjoy a live DJ set from Cambridge Radio's Chris Brown. Plus the spectacular 13-foot illuminated puppet from Orton Dance Theatre. At 7 p.m, look up. The night sky explodes into a magical kaleidoscope of colour and light. Support the show with our fireworks raffle. Win corn exchange tickets, a £100 Love Cambridge voucher, Jack's Gelato treats, wellness goodies and more. It's free to attend, so bring friends, wrap up warm and see you on Midsummer Common for Fireworks Night. Saturday 1st of November.
Hi there, you're listening to the Cambridge Film Show still on Cambridge Radio, and it's me, Emma, and Yossi, Vicky and Luke today. If you've missed any of your favourite shows or coverage, please don't worry, you can always catch up online. Just head to cambridgeradio.co.uk, click listen again, and you'll find all our previous shows waiting for you. You can also follow us on Instagram or X for updates, and also the occasional behind the scenes photo if that really is your vibe. Right. Vicky, as promised, I'm coming to you. The Cambridge Film Festival kicked off on Thursday with Begonia. What kind of... This is the 34th, is that right? 34th Cambridge Film Festival?
I couldn't tell you that right now.
I feel like it's growing. And so what kind of treats or tricks does Cambridge have in store for the next 8 days?
Well, I think today's a Saturday night, and we have strong contenders. We have Sirat, and then we go into Nouvelle Vague, which is Linklater's latest project, with Zoe Dutch, who's also in the show somewhere. And then from that, we have some pretty big numbers. We have The Voice of Hind Rajab, which is coming out on Monday, followed by Pillion, which will be Harry Lightfoot's bigger directorial debut. And I think a lot of people have seen this in the press because it has a wonderful
cover.
a lot of cover.
A lot of fashion.
Especially with Alexander Skarsgård starring. But I think that one is getting a lot of attention. And then later on, we'll have The History of Sound. And I think a lot of people, it's a Josh O'Connor kind of Paul Mescal drama, which I think has gotten a lot of attention. I mean, last night we had Hamnet, which was Paul Mescal. We have The Mastermind this week with Josh O'Connor. It really is the year of these boys. Yeah. And combined in The History of Sound, that is definitely going to be an interesting feat. This festival is going on until the 3rd of November. So we definitely have quite a lot still to see, especially since we still have another Begonia showing, but I do believe that one is sold out. So if there's any last minute tickets, I would definitely grab those. Having witnessed it on opening night, I do think Yorgos is in with another hit with this. Obviously joined by Emma Stone, which has been his companion for the past 2 movies he's let out.
And the wonderful Jessie Plemons. Although not so wonderful in this one. And saying that, there's so much more to see. Although there won't be a Mark Commode, who was last night as well, but there is still many exciting directors and guests
still to attend, and I do think the programme is wonderful and it's definitely worth a look out.
Thank you so much, Vicky. That was all the info for the Cambridge Film Festival, so please do get online, check that out and buy some tickets. Right, back to the cinema. Well, no, actually not back to the cinemas. Now we are on to some streaming.
Approximately 3 minutes ago, we detected an ICBM over the Pacific. Current flight trajectory is consistent with impact somewhere in the continental United States.
Have we seen DEFCON 2 before? No.
Is this real?
Stratcom is asking for launch instructions right now. I'm gonna need you to breathe.
We are talking about hitting a bullet with a bullet.
That was the trailer for A House of Dynamite, which is Catherine Bigelow's return to the big screen, or at least it was on the big screen for the last couple of weeks. Now it really got released on Netflix last night, streaming. Rebecca Ferguson, Idris Elba and Jared Harris headline a stuffed cast, to be honest, all playing White House workers, military and top brass in a taut real-time thriller telling the same 30 minutes from three separate angles as an unexplained nuclear threat heads to the continental US and possible world extinction. Yossi, because you are here, you just haven't had a chance.
I'm here. Hello, everyone.
So obviously Bigelow loves a military film. She loves some realism. She does her research intensely, and she's brought that kind of intensity and that procedural knowledge to this film. Did it work for you?
I'm going to say sort of yes, and I'll explain why. So it's nice to see a new film from Catherine Bigelow. I've not really... I'm trying to think what the last thing I saw by her. I think it was Detroit a few years ago. And she, like you say, she's very good at capturing the intensity of warfare, or in this case, a military threat. And this is very gripping for the most part. And and I've seen it marketed as more terrifying than any horror film you'll see this year, because it is very grounded in a gripping realism, and you do feel very tense as you watch it. As you mentioned in your great summary there, it's kind of told in three parts, but it's the same sequence of events and conversation told from three different perspectives. So for me, that first third, which is mainly Rebecca Ferguson and a couple of other characters, is brilliant. It's really gripping, it's really thrilling, and I was completely invested. When we start to see the conversation happening again, the second time, the third time, in fact, Idris Elba, who is playing the president, you don't actually see him until about an hour and 10 minutes in. It kind of started to falter for me a little bit, because there's nothing really new that's being added with the perspectives that you're seeing, to be honest, although there's a great turn by Greta Lee, who's, funnily enough, at a Gettysburg event, which is just a reenactment, which is quite ironic, really. Anyway, so there's no payoff, really. That was the one thing. I kind of left the film feeling a bit hollow. I mean, you can't really call it payoff in a nuclear war. That's probably not the right word. But I don't want to spoil it for people, because it is very interesting, and it is terrifying. It does feel like that could really happen.
I quite like the fact, I think, that it didn't sort of, when it went into the... I didn't feel like you. I enjoyed all three angles. I like the fact that you didn't sort of have like we were talking about Peter Dinklage. I'm looking at you, Luke, and no one sees that, but I'm looking at Luke, so I'm bringing him next. We were talking about Peter Dinklage being a cartoon baddie. I like the fact that there wasn't a cartoon baddie in that. You didn't have... Yeah, Tracy Letts. Love Tracy Letts, does a great turn as kind of one of the generals who's maybe a little bit more hawkish than the others, but it's not like, say, Crimson Tide or
he doesn't play a baddie so much as he feels like he's the last one to realise just how serious this threat is. So he's being very laissez-faire, and he's talking about the All-Star game last night, and everyone's sort of getting a bit annoyed with him because he's the only one who's not playing ball here. I'm with you. I really liked the structure of this film. I think there's definitely a case to be made that the film does become repetitive in some parts. You get conversations from one side of a Zoom call, and then 45 minutes later you see the same conversation from the other side of the Zoom call. And you have to go with that a little. Like, there's moments where you're like, I've heard this conversation already.
But I think, please carry on, but I was just going to say, I think when you're dealing with actors of this calibre, because this cast, people like Jared Harris, like Tracy Letts, like Idris Elba, you don't really mind, like Jason Clarke, because you're just seeing actors at the top of their game.
But and I also think the repetitiveness is very much by design. So this was written by Noah Oppenheimer, who was
Is he a relation?
To which one?
Oh, I don't know.
I mean, he's related to someone. He was a former NBC journalist, I think, and also and Catherine Bigelow is always involved in the production of all the films that she makes, and they were very much insistent that the story be told the way that it is. And one of the factors that actually created this film was them discovering that when a nuclear bomb is set off from the Pacific Theatre, it has 18 minutes until it reaches the continental United States, and they wanted to emphasise just how short 18 minutes is. So you see that first 18 minutes and you think, gosh, that was quite a short amount of time. And then you see it again and it feels like the time is compressed because you're seeing these same moments again and it feels compressed. And then by the time you get to the third act with Idris Elba, who's ultimately the only one here who has the authority to make any real decisions, you just see that the time just flies by. And you've already been accustomed to all the decision making, all the going up of the chain of command, and ultimately the decision sits with him and Jonah Howard King.
And he knows very little. That's what's quite scary
Yeah,
here.
and like you said, Jonah Howard King is going to pop up again in a threesome, who's sort of sitting there as his kind of.
I think that's the payoff isn't so much as what decision he ends up making, but this absolutely terrifying final sequence with him and Jonah Howard King on an airplane. Deciding what course of action to take, and just like I mentioned with Roofman, this is a film that you'll come out of and thinking, if I were in that character's point of view, what would I have done? And there's one more thing. I don't know how much time we have, but
not too much more. But throw it out there.
Jared Harris is probably really the emotional core of this film, and I read an interview with him. There's a really key moment where he talks to his daughter, played by Caitlin Dever, who's not really in it that much, and he was inspired by a story that Bruce Springsteen told live on air at the LA Coliseum in 1985 about a conversation he had when Springsteen got rejected from the army and came back home. So you might say that this is the best Bruce Springsteen biopic that we've got this week.
I like that. Well done, Luke. It was worth it. It all comes back to the boss. Well, I think Yossi was slightly less.
I did like it. I wanted a little bit more. I think especially with some of the emotional core, and there are a couple of characters, like Moses Ingram's character, one of the evacuees, that I would have just liked a little bit more development there. But overall, I thought it was it's definitely stronger than some of the other choices this week.
And I think it's a really strong return to the screen from Catherine Bigelow. She knows her comfort zone and she does it really well. And like I say, it is a treat to see most of the actors in this. That is A House of Dynamite. I did end up sitting on my sofa with clenched fists. It is quite a stressful watch. It's a Certificate 15. It's now streaming on Netflix. And we are sticking with Netflix for the next one.
Laura Blacklock. I'm Richard. So pleased to have you with us.
Thank you.
Laura here's an award-winning journalist. She's doing a piece for us on the Foundation. I know this is an unusual approach to charity. 3 days on a luxury yacht.
Laura here's going to be spying on us.
The world awaits with bated breath.
Oh man, it's time for The Woman in Cabin 10, which I sort of fell upon, I must admit, last week, but it is one of Netflix's biggest films of the last couple of weeks. It's a typically star-studded adaptation of Ruth Ware's bestseller in this case. Keira Knightley is starring as Laura Blacklock. She's a travel journalist who, for some inexplicable reason, has been invited on this luxury cruise hosted by Guy Pearce's tech billionaire. I couldn't even work out why she was on there. She then is convinced that she has witnessed someone go overboard, but everybody else and the passenger list is saying otherwise. But then soon her life seems to be in peril as they're cruising around the Norwegian fjords with this disparate group of guests. Is this theory all in Lo's head, or is she, Yossi, onto something? Right, Keira Knightley, I said, is the lead. Did you have any sympathy? I mean, you kind of have to carry the whole preposterous film. Did you have any sympathy for her, or is just holding in this performance?
Oh my gosh, this was such a frustrating watch for me. I mean, Keira Knightley is supposed to be playing this serious investigative journalist, but when she starts to discover that things are going awry, she's not showing any kind of nature of being an investigative journalist at all. She's running around screaming all her theories and accusations, and she's really annoying. And I'm sitting there thinking, if I'm on this boat with her, I'd be like, yeah, you're really ruining the vibe here, get off. Like, she's so frustrated in this that I could not take this film seriously at all. I don't know what you thought, Emma.
Well, and that's even before you get to the actual plot, which involves kind of AI and people impersonating people and wills tucked in like books in offices within this cruise ship. I mean, honestly, I think my biggest disappointment was this was Guy Pearce. Come on, you were in The Brutalist, and really you followed it up with this. Hannah Waddingham is in there doing it.
What was Hannah Waddingham's part in this? Why was she there at all?
Inexplicable Australian accent for some unknown reason. I mean, I don't know if it's meant to be kind of a bit like an Agatha Christie, like if it's meant to be like Death on the Nile,
yeah,
meets a sort of one of those like Gone Girl or psychological thrillers. But for a psychological thriller, it was just remarkably unthrilling. It's again, I mean, just so badly written, and I think they obviously just threw the budget at, like I say, oddly, it's not even a cruise in hot weather. They oddly just threw the budget to sort of sail around Norway for 4 days. Very strange. I mean,
there was not enough Norway for me, to be honest. I mean, most of the shots is everybody looking grumpy on this quite depressing looking boat.
Chilly, to be honest. I was like, for a multi-millionaire cruise, it does look a bit chilly, and not enough below deck action going on.
No, and I think you're right. I mean, the plot is quite ludicrous. You know, again, not wanting to give away the main.
I wouldn't want to spoil it.
We don't want to spoil it for our lovely listeners. But when you realise what's happening, it's just so. I can't believe they all fall for it. It's so silly. I can't work out, is this so bad it's good?
I couldn't quite work that out either, but I must admit on Letterboxd I think I gave it half a star at the end, so maybe not. But having said that, I did watch the whole thing, and it wasn't like I was laughing at it, not with it. It's the classic example, I think, of Netflix, like you say, taking one of these books that's done one of these thrillers, which are a genre in themselves for the last 10 years, and throwing a lot of famous people at it, relatively famous people, maybe not in the best cast manner, and just throwing all the screens, seeing what sticks. It is, again, only an hour and a half.
Yeah. I mean,
small mercies.
Yeah, it's 90 minutes. I mean, watch it just for how silly it is what I would say.
Watch it for the lols. That's what Diossi and I are saying. Even Luke tried to, but sadly couldn't watch more than 20 minutes. I think that was more to do with circumstances and how awful it is. Anyway, The Woman in Cabin 10 is a certificate 15. It is streaming on Netflix. On to Guadagnino's follow-up to Challengers.
So what do you think?
About what?
All of it. The student, the professor.
I think...
Can't take it back once it's been set in motion.
She mentioned a favorite teacher of hers, a mentor. This person was less than supportive when she came forward.
You know I love to rub it in like lotion.
So are you going to tell me why this is not true?
Everything about this feels like a cliche. She's exploiting this shallow cultural moment.
That was a little bit of the trailer for After the Hunt, but I'm going to throw it over to Luke because actually I am the only person who's seen this. It's going to be hard to ask myself questions.
Indeed. So I will give you the plot synopsis. Well, you don't need the plot synopsis. I guess our audience does. After a college professor finds herself at a personal crossroads when a star student levels an accusation against one of her colleagues, threatening to expose a dark secret from her past. You've told me, Emma, this is a post-Me Too film, and it's directed by Luca Guadagnino, who has very much been focused on sex and sexy themes in a lot of his films, which seems, I would say, interesting mix for his choice of tale here.
Well, of course, and this was also partly filmed in Cambridge, so there was some star spotting to be done with Anna Edibiri and Julia Roberts and Andrew Garfield and Guadagnino. Right, I haven't seen Bones and All, and but I did. I'm not like a Guadagnino completist, but I did very much love Call Me by Your Name, and I adored Challengers. Like I said, it was my film of the year. So I was going into this really high hopes, and Julia Roberts, has been a lot of Oscar buzz around Julia Roberts' performance, a lot of word about how this is a career best as this sort of chilly, intellectual, sort of tightly coiled professor looking for tenure. This is essentially what she's doing. She's looking for tenure at Yale. She's married to Michael Stuhlbarg, who again is a constant in Guadagnino's films, playing her husband Frederick, and she has a sort of ongoing flirty relationship with Hank, played by Andrew Garfield, who's the sort of philosophy professor in her department, and they have this very close friendship. And the first scene is they're all at sort of a lovely party that's being thrown at Julia Roberts, at Alma and Frederick's Addenbrooke's house, and you see Hank is there, obviously feeling terribly comfortable, and then you also have Ayo Edebiri, best known for The Bear, of course, Siv from The Bear, and she is playing the protege, if you like, but she also happens to be the daughter of some very wealthy beneficiaries to the college, so there's some complexity there. And the film opens with then Ayo Edebiri, Andrew Garfield's character Hank, walks her back. She then comes to Alma the next day and says that he has sexually assaulted her, and then it's a question of who does Alma believe. And on top of that, there is this sort of piece of paper that Maggie finds in a toilet that she's going to reveal. This was such a disappointment. I'm so sorry to say that, because I was really looking forward to it. I thought this was going to be a good grown-up film, like sort of Spotlight or
Women Talking. That was another one.
That kind of thing, like a talky grown-up film. It is too removed. It's too intellectual. You don't really care about these professors talking about their intellectual issues in this very rarefied environment, let's say. I didn't care for any of the characters. I mean, obviously you're meant to be thinking the whole time, who's right, who's wrong, what's really happened, does it matter what's happened, why should we not believe someone automatically, why is Julia Roberts' character taking Hank's side so much, but it's just it was really dull, I have to say. It just doesn't, it scratches the surface of what is an interesting, post-Me Too. There are also questions of race, there's questions of entitlement, there's questions of tenure, there's questions of what we go to university for these days. There's a lot there that I thought Guadagnino would be a bit sharper with, and he's just not. It does, however, look amazing.
Well, isn't this a Netflix release?
Well, it's only on the cinemas, I think.
It was a cinema release.
It's a cinema release, and it does look incredible. The colour-scape is incredibly chilly, probably deliberately, and Maggie, Ayo Edebiri's character, is clearly sort of so besotted by Alma that she sort of dresses in the same way, and it's a very, very cold palette of colours. Maggie's character has a sort of a war side office where she goes to work to try and write her dissertation, and the design of it, and there's the most incredible scene with her and Hank, Andrew Garfield, sitting in a curry house having a discussion about this accusation, and they're sort of filmed with a mirror to the side of them, and their faces, the double faces are there. So there's some really, really what you expect from Guadagnino, marvellous technical shots, but it's just not carried by a story or a script that you can care enough about.
Well, there we go then. And it's also incredibly long, isn't it? I think that's the thing that it's 2 hours 20, which is going to be, I think, for a film of this topic, is going to be a real hard sell for a lot of people.
Absolutely agreed. I mean, my heart sank when I saw the running time, and I thought, well, no, let's stick with it. It could be, this is Guadagnino. He could do some interesting stuff. It just isn't interesting enough. I'm so sorry. But that's After the Hunt. It's Certificate 15. It is showing at the Picture House and the Light. Right, we are going to close up with an Amazon Prime original, The Threesome.
Hi.
I want to take you on a real date. Tomorrow night.
I'm working.
The next night then. Final offer.
You can buy my breakfast. That's kind of like a date.
I want you to accept what you have with Olivia. You guys are friends, friends-ish, friends adjacent. Look over there at that table. She just got stood up. Go over there and talk to her. Show Olivia. Another girl sees how much of a catch you are.
Is this man bothering you?
No, not at all.
Because he's wanted in multiple states for indecent exposure.
She's kidding. Oh.
Yeah.
So this is The Threesome. It's a bittersweet romance directed by someone called Chat Hartigan, who I haven't come across. Josh Howard King, previously seen in House of Dynamite, is playing Connor, and he's been pining for his hometown crush, Olivia, who's played by Zoe Deutsch. Somehow they end up in the title of the film, a threesome with another girl called Jenny, played by Ruby Cruz, and this has sort of far-reaching consequences that none of them actually expected. So we kick off with the threesome, and it takes us to different places. Yossi, this is a romance, clearly, but it also covers religion and politics in where it goes. Did it bite off a bit more than it can chew, or did you really enjoy it?
I think this one was quite the surprise for me. I went into watching this not knowing much about it at all, and I was expecting quite a completely different film, to be honest. And what I got was quite a mature rom-com. The themes that it deals with in this completely outlandish situation are handled quite maturely, and I thought it was quite sweetly done as well. I really, really like Zoe Deutsch. So I'd like to see her in anything, and I think she is very good in this. And what started out as something that I thought this is going to get very tiresome, it didn't. I was quite, I was really intrigued by it, and I thought they took on some like I say, quite out there scenarios and themes and put it into something that altogether was entertaining to me. So I quite like this one.
I was very careful in my introduction, Luke, and I didn't call it a rom-com. I called it a bittersweet romance because I know that you are the rom-com king. I didn't want to overstep the mark. Maybe it's not a rom-com, maybe it is a rom-com.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of both, and that's what's intriguing about this. I enjoyed this as well. I think the title is really salacious and misleading.
It makes you think you can see it wrong.
The first 20 minutes. Yeah, the first 20 minutes of this film is very, very sexy. The kind of, maybe what you might have been expecting from a Luca Guadagnino film, where you have the three of them and they have immense chemistry, and then, as yours suggests, the film then settles down into something a lot more nuanced, and it becomes somewhere between a character drama and a romantic comedy, because you do have all the trappings of a rom-com. It is very much Jonah Howard King deciding which of these two women he wants to spend the rest of his life with, ultimately, or which one he wants to be a father to after getting both of them pregnant, which feels wacky, but I think this very much feels realistic. And one thing that's really surprising about this film is it's directed by a man called Chad Hartigan, and it also written by a man as well, and it doesn't feel like a masculine film. I think the two female characters are really, really well realised, and if anything, Jonah Howard King as the guy feels more like the plot device for which these two women can bounce off.
It is always hard, I think, to come up against Zoe Deutsch's charisma. I was a bit worried at the beginning, you're right, that she was a bit manic pixie dream girl, but then, because she's not particularly pleasant either, but it's settled in a really lovely way, I think.
Yeah, it would be remiss of me not to gush about how much I love Zoe Deutsch. She's done this kind of performance many, many times. This may not be the best of hers, but she has done, I think this is, if you like her stuff, that kind of sharp but also vulnerable side to her, I think you will get an awful lot out of this, and she's always worth watching in anything. I absolutely agree, and I think we said this a lot on this show as well. Amazon Prime really does have some hidden gems. I think you can get kind of swamped in by the Netflix stuff, but often Prime will have something delightful just like this. So that is The Threesome, highly recommended from us from a streaming watch. It's a certificate 15, and it is streaming on Amazon Prime. And that is everything for this October edition of the Cambridge Film Show. Big thanks to Yossi, Vicky and Luke, and always to you, the listeners, for tuning in. Hopefully we found you something to watch this weekend, whether it be on the big screen or the small, and we're going to be back in 2 more weeks to guide you through the best of what's new then as well. I've been Emma Marchant. Thank you very much. Happy Halloween.
Cambridge Film Show.
This is Cambridge Radio.